You need another one? All right, let me run out to my truck and grab one more for me. Anybody else need one? Last opportunity. I've got like 30 more in my truck. All right. So welcome everybody. Welcome to the 163rd anniversary of the Second Battle of Winchester. We're really excited to have you guys on this ground. We're standing at the location where the historic Carter farm was during the Second Battle of Winchester. So we're really excited to have you guys out here. This is our first battle walk onto the property since we've had it preserved. Now we have a nice trail that runs through it. So we're really excited to have you guys out here to come and join us. And this is my a battle that means a lot to me personally. This is the only battle within our National Historic District that I had a direct ancestor fight at. My third great grandfather fought in the 50th Virginia Infantry in Edward Allegheny Johnson's division, which is the division that fights here on this field. Although his regiment's a little bit further away from here when that action's taking place. But like I said, even on a personal level, it means a lot to me. Then from the Battlefield Foundation's perspective, this is our first, like I said, one of our first tours on this property since we've had it preserved. And in the near future, you're gonna see a lot of news about this battlefield right here. You're gonna see eventually interpretive markers added in here, a permanent trail system added in here. And this is not just gonna be at the Carter farm, but at our location that we also preserved just off of 522 where the attack at West Fort took place. So for years, the Second Battle of Winchester, the infantry's opening action of the Gettysburg campaign, it's really never had a battlefield park dedicated towards it. Now we will finally have that. So we're excited to have you guys out here. And once again, my name is Michael Gionfriddo. I work with the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. Now before we get into the trail, I do want to lay a few ground rules, and not even that, just some little heads up. This is fairly even ground. I mean, we're not tackling any hills or anything like that. We're going to be out there for probably about 45 minutes to an hour at most. I never really like to give a time estimate with my tours though, because I always accidentally run long, so expect that today. And we'll go through, we'll talk about the setup to this battle, what brings the battle, or what happens during the battle, what brings the action over to this field, and then what happens on these hallowed grounds that we're exploring today. It's a hot day out today, so please feel free to let me know if you guys are feeling a little queasy or feeling like you guys need any assistance. Now, we're only going on a quick little loop. We should be in view of this parking lot the entire time. So if at any time you guys are feeling like it's getting a little hot out there, there's not too much shade, although we are getting a little cloud cover right now. If you guys feel like you need to head back to your car, sit down for a little bit, feel free to. Like I said, we'll be in view of this parking lot the whole time. It's gonna be a fairly easy walk, but we're talking through a lot of interesting stuff today. So, the Second Battle of Winchester. What brings us here? Well, this is the third of the major battles that happened in Winchester throughout the American Civil War. We consider the first Battle of Kernstown to be the first battle that happens in Winchester. The first Battle of Winchester is really the second battle that happens in town. Those were during Jackson's Valley campaign in spring of 1862. Now we are in summer of 1863. What's going on here in the Eastern Theater? What's happening here, and why is there a battle that eventually happens here in Winchester for 3 days that summer? Well, following Robert E. Lee's victory at the Battle of Chancellorsville in May of 1863, he's supremely confident. Although he's just lost his top general, Stonewall Jackson, Lee lost him in an overwhelming victory. He divided his army twice in the face of a superior-sized enemy, and he defeated them. Now, Lee wants to reshift his army from a 2-wing army to a 3-corps army, and he wants to send them into motion into their second invasion of the North. Now, what's he trying to accomplish in this invasion of the North? Well, a number of things. He wants to help gain a Southern victory on Northern soil. Maybe that will help with foreign recognition. Maybe it will start to pressure the war-weary public in the North. On top of that, he wants to take the war out of Virginia just to begin with. So this is what's going to lead Lee to launch his second invasion of the North, summer of 1863. Like I said, he takes his 2-wing army and reshifts them to a 3-corps army. Longstreet leads the 1st Corps. Dick Ewell will lead the 2nd Corps. That's Jackson's old corps, and the 3rd Corps is commanded by A.P. Hill. Now, the 2nd Corps is who we're going to focus on here today. These are Stonewall Jackson's old boy, the old Jackson Foot Cavalry. Now they're commanded by Richard Ewell. And I want everyone here who's been to Gettysburg, and you guys know the narrative at what happens with him at Gettysburg, get that out of your head. Ewell is a very capable general, and he proves it right out here during 3 days during that same exact campaign. Get it out of your head that he doesn't have the, the men are not as motivated to fight under Ewell like they would have been under Jackson. You can read the accounts of members of the Stonewall Brigade and the Stonewall Division. They say they were absolutely confident in Ewell, almost as much as they would have been in Jackson if he was there that day. When Jackson fell, Ewell was the answer to command that corps going forward. Now, he's also returning back from a wound, so there's a little bit of a there's a worry that he might be a little bit more weary on the battlefield. Like I said, get all those preconceived notions that you have of Ewell out of your head. He performs very aggressively on this battlefield right here. So it's June of 1863, following the cavalry action at Brandy Station on June 10th, 1863, Ewell's Second Corps will cross Chester Gap into the Shenandoah Valley. Now Lee's army are in the valley. This is going to be their springboard as they cross the Mason-Dixon line in their second invasion of the North. So Ewell will move, like I said, into the Shenandoah Valley, and he will begin to advance on Winchester from the south. The only Union troops between the Confederate Army and the Mason-Dixon line is Robert Milroy's division here in further south in Winchester, Virginia. And we'll get to Milroy in a minute. Now, we'll get into him right now. Robert Milroy, interesting figure. He holds the longest occupation of Winchester during the American Civil War. Now, Milroy was a veteran of the Mexican-American War. He had been a lawyer before the war in Indiana. Now he's in command of a division within the 8th Army Corps, and that division is who is commanding Winchester, Virginia. Now, his command starts to arrive in Winchester right around Christmas of 1862. He fully arrives on January 1st of 1863. What happens on January 1st, 1863? Anybody know? Well, that's when the Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect. Milroy is a staunch abolitionist, and he puts the hammer down on the people in Winchester, Virginia. He strikes them with an iron fist. He says, quotes, that his word is the law there in town. And because of that, Milroy gets himself into some hot water between the locals and himself. They don't like him. He doesn't really seem to like them. He frees the African Americans in Winchester. He frees the enslaved populace in Winchester, Virginia. This aggravates a little bit of the local populace, and this kind of pushes their little rivalry even further. It gets even worse when Milroy's wife gets to town. She's a little upset because the Union soldiers didn't really have much pomp and circumstance for her arrival, so she orders her husband to go commandeer a nicer house as a headquarters. And they'll commandeer the Logan house as their headquarters, kicking the Logan family out. It's another very controversial move during Milroy's occupation. Milroy's occupation in Winchester is the longest occupation of Winchester during the American Civil War. You guys know any fun facts about Winchester in the war? You know probably that it was exchanged 72 different times between the Union and Confederate armies, and you know that it hosted 6 major battles. The longest of those 72 occupations is Milroy's occupation. And like I said, it's the one where the Confederate populace in Winchester, Virginia were most aggravated by. So Milroy was referred to as a beast. Like I said, he put the hammer down on the people in town. He was described being very similar to like Benjamin Butler in New Orleans, Louisiana. There was the Beast Butler, there was the Beast Milroy here in the Valley. So this is all in the minds of the Confederate soldiers as they are approaching Winchester from the south. They know who is commanding this division here in town. It is the tyrant Milroy. Now, Milroy doesn't sit by idly in town and just kind of, go back and forth with the townspeople. His troops spend a lot of time reinforcing the fortifications in Winchester, Virginia. If you guys look at your map, you're going to see a series of fortifications just north and northwest of town. This includes fortifications such as Main Fort, Star Fort, West Fort, Fort Collier. While many of these were originally dug during Stonewall Jackson's occupation and during the Confederate occupations earlier in the war, Milroy takes a lot of time and reinforces these earthworks. Star Fort goes from being a small gun lunette to being the Star Fort with sights poking out on every side. So like I said, Milroy doesn't sit by idly. He spends time reinforcing the earthworks in Winchester. Now, there's a little issue with these earthworks. Most of them, like I said, originally dug by the Confederate Army. A lot of them primarily face north. The Confederate threat is going to come from the south. And he's got a series of small, readouts and lunettes that line the roads that approach Winchester from the south, but nothing as serious as what he has northwest of town with Main Fort, West Fort, Fort Collier, and Star Fort. Now, Ewell is approaching Winchester from the south. On June 12, 1863, some of the skirmishing in the community south of Winchester will begin the fight for the Second Battle of Winchester. 163 years ago today, Ewell's corps is going to approach Winchester from the south. He's going to have 3 divisions in his corps. One division, Robert Rhodes' division, marches around Winchester and will try and seize Berryville further east of here. The other 2 divisions stay with Ewell, stay with Ewell. Jubal Early's division is going to march on the Valley Pike, and you're going to have Edward Allegheny Johnson's division marching on the Front Royal Pike. This is interesting because the 2 divisions that are marching on Winchester are using the same exact path that Jackson had, that both Jackson and Ewell had during the First Battle of Winchester, just a little bit more than a year earlier. So you have kind of that connection. The Confederates are advancing the same exact way they had just a year earlier. So if anyone's thinking that Ewell's a bad successor to Jackson, for the men who are in his army, right there, right then, it's some good deja vu. They're excited. They have a lot of confidence in Ewell, and they feel like they're about to score another smashing victory there in town. Like I said, less than a year earlier, the First Battle of Winchester, that was the emotional high point of Stonewall Jackson's military career. The men in his command know that, and they're hoping to have another smashing victory out here this summer. So the battle will start south of town on June 13th, 1863, 163 years ago today. Early's division marches on the Valley Pike. They'll press into the Union positions on Pritchard Hill. Edward Allegheny Johnson's division overrun Union positions on the Front Royal Pike. And the Union command starts to be withdrawn within the town. On the second day of battle, they're positioned in their forts northwest of the town. If you're looking at the map, look over on the western side of town now, or the northwestern side of town. It's on the second day where Jubal Early's division will march around. They'll bombard West Fort, and later on in the afternoon of June 14th, 1863, they will attack and they will capture West Fort. They will then use those positions to bombard Star Fort and Main Fort, where the Union Army is positioned in. Later on that night, Milroy realizes he cannot hold this town. The trap is set. I forgot to mention leading into this battle, Milroy was warned about these movements right here. He's receiving telegraphs saying, evacuate Winchester. The feared army of Northern Virginia, Robert E. Lee's army, is about to bear down on your position. That's not a good spot to be at. He doesn't really understand what's going on here. Well, Lee's army was last seen over by Fredericksburg. How can this be? How can they be attacking me right now? Well, Ewell's corps, Jackson's old corps, veterans of the Valley, were advancing on Milroy's position. Telegraph wires are cut in the moments leading into the battle. This adds to the confusion and pandemonium all throughout the Union Army. Now, Milroy, like I said, he was ordered to evacuate Winchester. He stubbornly said, I can hold here in town with my earthworks. So by the time the Union really has an idea of what's attacking their position, he's not receiving that word anymore. And he's already kind of made his decision to hold out there in the forts. He doesn't want to leave his precious earthworks that he had spent months reinforcing. So Milroy will order the guns to be spiked on midnight of June 14th of 1863. My apologies, I think I said 1864 at one of those times. On June 14th of 1863, the guns are spiked. They're left where they are. The wagons are abandoned. Milroy orders all of his men to march only with their equipment. Many of them don't even have food with them right now. The baggage trains, the munitions, all of that is going to be left behind. The cannons will be left behind. Everything that can make noise, anything with a wheel, leave it in Winchester. We're evacuating. Now remember, Robert Rhodes' division has already captured Berryville over to the east. So Milroy's evacuation route, if you look at the map, is going to take him on the Martinsburg Pike, Route 11, the Valley Pike, which is over in that direction. That's the road we turned off of to get to this parking lot. They're going to go north on the Valley Pike, the same route that we were just driving, and their only breakout route is going to take them across the old Charlestown Road, which is, you see the woods perpendicular to us all the way in the distance? In those woods is where the Charlestown Road is. It cuts over this railroad cut that you guys see in the distance, and we'll talk all about this in a little bit. But that road over there, the old Charlestown Road, that is the Union escape route back to Harper's Ferry. When they abandon Winchester, their goal is to make it back to safety at Harper's Ferry. That is the road that is going to take them over there. Now during this night, Ewell perfectly predicts his opponent's moves. And he's going to set Edward Allegheny Johnson's division, who through the second day, they had been kind of poking and prodding against the Union over on the eastern side of Winchester. They'll slip away, and they're going to march all the way around through where the 3rd Winchester Battlefield Park is today, and they're going to arrive at Jordan Sulphur Spring over in the distance. The homeowner tells him, hey, you guys want to set up in a good position? There's a railroad that runs all the way over in that direction. That's the railroad right there. You guys just move through those fields. You basically have a trench set up for you guys. So Johnson's division, Edward Allegheny Johnson's leading the fabled Stonewall division. We'll get into them in a little bit. They'll position in this railroad cut. So the Union Army has to go on a bridge that cuts over the trench that the Confederate Army are positioned in. This is a big trap, and this leads to some pretty interesting action out there. So let's walk a little bit into the field, and we'll talk about some of the early shots that lead to the fighting out here at the Carter farm that morning.